Hello everyone, and welcome to this Alps webinar on governor training. The purpose of today is to go through Key Stage 4 and 5 Alps methodology and give you an overview as governors of what that means really, so that you can have these conversations back in school. My name's Sue. Just a little bit of background. I was a deputy head in a secondary school for a number of years and used Alps there, and was also responsible for reporting Alps outcomes, etc., to the governing body. So if I mention that again, you'll hopefully forgive me as using that as an example. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the methodology. I'm going to look at national benchmarks. I'm going to look at target setting, mainly because without that, you're going to find it more difficult to understand how these school progress indicators are set up and how they're measured. So I'm going to talk mostly about the strategic overview and subject indicators. I'm not really going to talk that much about student indicators, but suffice to say that schools have got access to student progress data. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this thing, Connect Interactive. Now, you might be part of a governing body of a school where you have not got Connect Interactive and you're using Alps reports only. That's absolutely fine. You won't have the monitoring aspect of what I'm going to talk about in this session, but you will still be able to use this webinar to get an idea of how the methodology works and to understand the report that's put down in front of you. So that's really the main purpose of it. If you do have Connect Interactive, you might very well see it because senior leadership teams might put it down in front of you. But what you would potentially definitely see is the strategic outcomes from that Connect Interactive analysis. So I'm going to talk you through that this afternoon and just talk you through how you might interpret those scores. What I hope you get from it is, for me, one, not to bore you to death with Alps methodology, but what I hope you can do by the end of it is hold schools to account. Now, when I say hold them to account, I don't mean batter them with a stick, because I think if you start doing that with Alps, it becomes less of a powerful tool. But what I hope you can do is you can start to have really powerful conversations with with your senior leadership teams. And asking where their key priorities are and how they're going to set improvements in place or indeed maintain good progress. Okay, so let's start with the philosophy of Alps. I always valued it as a deputy head because it allowed me to talk to individual students about their own progress and their own life chances. And really, that's the start point. It's the individual student and improving their life chances. And this next slide is really kind of epitomizes that. Alps and the people of Alps have always been very much principled in terms of this is about the student. And yes, there are school indicators and there are subject indicators, but the bottom line is if you get the student progress right, then everything else comes good. And so in terms of talking to those students, it is absolutely critical that your school staff are looking at those students as individuals, as exceptions, and really valuing their progress and the support that they put into those students. Okay, having said all that, I'm going to look at strategically where you come in and your role. Now, I'm going to start with a little bit of DFE Ofsted stuff. Okay, so bear with me because you're obviously all going to be at different places, and I'm going to talk generically about those headline measures. So this is from the inspection handbook. Okay, so I've picked out the various different bits that I think are pertinent to this webinar, and you as sort of overseers of that progress and holding schools to account on that. So where do you fit in? Well, first of all, you are responsible for, with the senior leadership team, of that ambition culture. I'm going to talk a lot about aspirational target setting and the aspiration of Alps. that then leads to, if things aren't great, where's the challenge, and also the support of your senior leadership team in allowing them to bring about improvements. Ofsted would ask you as to whether you understand the strengths and areas improvements. Understanding Alps, if your school or college is using Alps, I think is absolutely key to that in terms of progress. And therefore, if you're understanding the strengths and areas, are you providing the right support in terms of asking the right questions because you understand where you're coming from, or where the school's coming from and where they need to go? The rest is about individual sort of impact on students. But the bottom one there, pupil premium, I'm saying that because very much throughout the whole of your school inspection handbook and what we'll look at in a minute, which was your accountability measures, disadvantage is there. It's all through it. So the great news is that Alps Reports and Alps Connect Interactive is going to allow you to do some filtering on disadvantage and allow you to look at those gaps and ask the right questions about the size of the gaps and how they might be closing the gaps. Okay, so that's just an overview of the evaluation schedule. That's the Ofsted evaluation schedule, just teasing out the various different bits that are sort of pertinent to you. Talked about that culture of ambition in leadership and management. Are you looking at the disadvantaged outcomes and their progress? Okay, so it's in terms of leadership and management. The teaching and learning is more about individual teachers, but obviously your role is to support the school in ensuring that that's happening and that teachers are sort of mirroring that culture of aspiration across the curriculum, and that intervention is timely and clear, and teachers are clear on what is going to happen, and also parents are clear too. So you've got a pivotal role to play there, don't you, in that. In terms of outcomes, look, it's substantial and sustained progress. So all of the Alps indicators are about progress. Disadvantage comes up there, SEND comes up there. And again, English and maths is obviously very pertinent at Key Stage 4, but also at Key Stage 5. I'm going to talk about that when I talk about the accountability measures at Key Stage 5. Right, what about Key Stage 4 accountability then? Those are your headline measures. Now, I am going to say right from the outset, Alps is not and never has been a set of measures that remotely tries to replicate these accountability headline measures. Never has done at Key Stage 5, and nor does it do it at Key Stage 4. So you will not get a dashboard from an Alps report that has Progress 8 numbers. Why not? Because headline measures change, but also because that Alps philosophy is students at the heart of it. And if they're making good progress, then your subject progress indicators will be strong, and therefore so will your strategic indicators. So there is a progress measure that nods to Progress 8. I'm going to talk about that later, but it's not a Progress 8 number. There is a measure in terms of that, I wanted to have a fourth bullet point down, of pupils achieving a grade 5 in English and in maths. Your subject and pastoral staff and your raising standards staff will be able to get that information out of Connect as to whether students are getting a grade 5 or above or not. But they that's it. That's just to support them in terms of their intervention. You won't get any of those other measures out of your Alps report, okay? At Key Stage 5 there, or post 16, I should say, what you've got again there in terms of your level 3 value added measures is very much a focus on progress. Now, I mainly got these down here for us to talk about the differences and how you can use Alps to get a feel for this. So level 3 value added will measure academic qualifications, so your A levels, and ASs and EPQ and various others. Separate from your applied generals, which is your sort of more vocational BTECs or many BTECs, Cambridge Technicals. You've also got a tech level, which is some more vocational qualifications. Okay, so you've got various different measures in your level 3 value added. Now let me contrast that with Alps. You will have an A level measure, the EPQ is part of that. You will have AS measures, and you will have a BTEC report, which has got BTECs and Cambridge Technicals in it. And there's slight differences in the way that those things are talked about in terms of Alps. Your disadvantage measure there, I've put that in just to sort of highlight to you the importance of that group of students in terms of measuring their progress. And that's a more relatively recent inclusion in the post-16 accountability. Having said all that, mostly it's the same as last year. There is an English and Maths progress measure. Now, I'm mentioning that because actually that's not part of Alps at this point in time. So that's looking at how many of your students have got a level 2 pass in English and in Maths from their Key Stage 4 curriculum. And if they have not got that, then you as a provider should be making sure that they're working towards that level 2 pass. Second one there is about level 3 vocational qualifications which do and don't count in the performance tables. That is a nod to your BTECs. So I'm going to come back to that when I look at BTEC benchmarks later on. But that's the difference between 2010s and 2016 BTECs. So the old BTECs and the new BTECs. Let me come back to that. Right then, now I'm mentioning this little bit because of colours and categories. So the DFE, if you were to go on to the DFE performance tables and look at Key Stage 4 or 5 progress scores, you will see colours and bandings that look like this. Note, well below average is red and well above average is green. Now, Alps is different to that. Alps is based on a thermometer, which we'll see in a moment, and the top of the Alps scale is red because it's the thermometer, and red is hot. So it was developed, remember Alps was developed before any DFE performance tables had any colours like this in it. So that's why the colours are slightly out of sync. That banding then goes across Key Stage 4 and 5. Here is a typical performance table for Key Stage 4. So you are going to get, there's 2 schools here, but you're going to get a Progress 8 score. Okay, that rotates around 0 and categorized according to those colors. The Alps rotational score, in other words, the score that everything hinges around, is 1.00. So it's not quite the same thing. It's not that Alps has chosen 1 and Progress 8 has chosen 0. Slightly different sway to it, but I just want you to be aware that the sort of the magic number in Alps isn't 0, it's 1.00. Okay, I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And then here are your other headline measures. Okay, so we're just going to be focused on the progress measure. There's your Key Stage 5, one same. Look, 2 schools. Again, the number rotates around 0 for the progress score for that. And here are some of your other headline measures for Key Stage 5. Okay. Summary then. Both trying to look at the same things, really, depending, whether you're in Alps or you're looking at your Progress 8 scores or level 3 value added. At Key Stage 4, what's the priority? Making sure that all students make progress from Key Stage 2. That's what Alps does. Key Stage 2 is the start point. Close any of those gaps. Get your curriculum right and provide good career guidance. All of those different types of questions and discussions can happen around your Alps report. Okay. Post 16, those are your sort of key priorities. Again, it's about progress and making sure that they're on the right courses so that you retain them, and making sure that their destinations and their life chances are improved as a result of your input in terms of your post 16 curriculum. Okay, so in terms of what Alps is, and we've talked a little bit about what it won't do for you. What it does do for you is that it's about embedding Alps across the school or college. Now, we do a lot of training out and about, and it's very important to us to make sure that leadership teams understand that it isn't just a book that sits on a desk and you look at it sort of once a year. It will have very little impact if that is the case. But if you're using it effectively to set priorities and improve your quality assurance cycles, to improve your monitoring and your tracking, and improve your support and challenge with individual department areas, then it will have more impact. And the really effective Alps schools are the ones who do that. They've embedded it across the whole of their school. And what that means is that staff training is absolutely paramount, so that everyone understands where the target grades are coming from, how the system works, how to use Connect Interactive if you've got it to best effect, because the best use of Connect Interactive is right down at the subject level, where you can do modelling on individual students, moving grades and seeing what impact that's having on them and on your subject outcomes. For me, it was really important to involve students in that. We would have assemblies, we would train students in Alps, we'd make sure they understood where their target grades came from, so that we could have critical conversations with them whenever we needed to across the academic year, across their key stage, and that they understood what we were trying to do and how we were trying to support them and what their end goal might look like. It then becomes much more about teamwork. So it becomes about us working together in order to make sure that that UCAS application, or that application to a sixth form college or your sixth forms or an apprenticeship, is absolutely as great as that student can get it. I also thought it was really important to involve parents. They also need a little bit of explanation as to where grades have come from, target grades, where predicted grades are being generated, what they mean, and how they can work with us as a school or with their sons and daughters to ensure that the best progress is being made. And then last but not least is you as governors. Really important that you're also talking that language, that every time you put an Alps report in front of your governing body, or that you get an Alps report put in front of you, that you're not having to start at the beginning and work out what the heck it means. Hence the fact that I've done this webinar to just support that process, really, so that you can watch it as many times as you like, and just really get to grips with what those Alps numbers mean. Then you can have the key conversations. Then you can ask the key questions. So, your governing body meetings are precious, your time's precious. So you want to be really focused on why subject, or how to improve subject and strategic indicators rather than what they mean. So that's the key sort of thinking behind me doing this webinar, is to help you maximize your time in those meetings. Right, this is the annual cycle. So it's basically a sort of strategic overview of what might be going on at any given point in the quality assurance cycle in a school, and how Alps can help, or what kind of things you might be asking of your senior leadership team. So 3 terms, 3 big terms, then there's results day. Autumn term, you might be looking at a subject review from examination outcomes, straight into target setting. Where's our starting point with our current year group? That was the year group gone. This is the new year group coming in. Where are they right now? So therefore, what are our priorities? Are we happy with what they look like, or do we need some intervention? Any staff training needed, governor training, parents, students. You'll notice that at any given point, we've got sort of webinars. that will hopefully help with that. They will all be on the training hub, which is where this webinar is. So do feel free to let me bore you with every webinar going there if you need that to get a better flavour of any part of this process. You will see Connect Interactive more and more on different webinars. I'm not going to go into much detail on it in this because you haven't got a login. Mainly for GDPR reasons, because it does go right to the student name and the student's details in terms of their cohort details, their ethnicity, gender, disadvantage, etc. Okay, once you get past that first bit of term one, you're then into monitoring. And you might have different types of monitoring grades that are put in front of you as the year goes on. You know, some might be predicted grades, some might be working at grades, some might be mock grades. Over here, those are the sort of the last grades before the final exams. So there will be different slants on different monitoring grades at different points, and that's obviously a discussion for you and your senior leadership team to have as to what they are looking at any given point. Okay. And then right at the very end of the year, just before summer term, you're probably looking at review of the year gone by and preparation for next year. What went well, what didn't go well, that kind of thing. And so that's a chance to reflect, to look at your assessment cycles, to look at how well your staff have accessed the analysis, to look at how well your governing body are feeling about what they were provided with that year, and move forward together in terms of your priorities for next year. So do feel free to watch any webinars you want, and that Alps cycle is available on the website as well. There's that address there on the Implementing Alps page. Right, okay, talked a bit about monitoring. So what oh goodness me, what should you be looking at for monitoring? For me, the biggest power of Connect Interactive is in the in-year tracking. Brilliant exam results analysis, but the rest of the year, it's about, if we put in monitoring grades, what will our strategic overview and our subject overview and our student overview look like on results day? And to do that, you got to embed that across everybody in the school or college, with that understanding of what's expected them at any given point for monitoring. The purpose of it then is who's making great progress, praise, well done, keep going, reporting home. Who's not making great progress, and what are we going to do about it? How are we supporting them? What effect are they having on their own prospects and on the the various indicators? Have we got any gaps? So was there a gap identified from last summer, and is it still there in our monitoring data? And if so, what can we do about it? And then the fourth bullet point there is really key. This is a new area. All of the above three bullet points are only pertinent if your subject areas and staff are putting in accurate grades. So the monitoring accuracy area is a space where your leadership team and your subject leaders can start to look at whether there are any predicting issues in the past, and if there are, then can we trust that data going in, or do we have to have those powerful conversations with subject staff in order to ask, where are you getting that predicted data from? Has it been validated? Have you gone through a moderation process? Is there any external moderation in that? And do you understand what data we're actually asking for? If you got all of that right, then your key priorities will be spot on, and you won't have any surprises on results day. And more importantly, neither will the students opening the brown envelope, because the last thing that you want is for them to have nasty surprises in the sense of, I was predicted X and I got Y. So that's for me the big power of Connect. Okay, here we go. This is my guide to methodology. Where does it all come from? What do the numbers mean? And how can I start to ask critical questions of my senior leadership team? Right. Okay. First things to say is that obviously you've got your Alps report on results day from if it's been submitted, it's right there. Connect Interactive is available to school staff on results day, and so they can start doing their analysis from that. And they can start sharing that with you, or if, as most schools do, have that sort of overview in September. You can then start establishing your priorities going forward at the start of the academic year, and you as governors can support in that process. Okay, so progress. So what does that mean? It means there has to be a start point and an end point. At Key Stage 5, whether you're doing A levels or BTECs, the prior attainment is the average GCSE score, just GCSEs. And the output score is the UCAS points. So we're going to look at a benchmark table right now, which is going to start with your Key Stage 4 outcomes and end with your Key Stage 5 outcomes. And regardless of which qualification type you're looking at, Key Stage 5, that is what you are measuring, the progress between those 2 points. At Key Stage 4, the start point is your Year 6 Key Stage 2 fine grade if you're in England, and if you're in Wales, then it's your Welsh National Test score. If you're then measuring it with an output of GCSE points, again, if you're in England, that's 9 to 1 with a few A stars to Gs thrown in. If you're in Wales, A star to G. Okay, that's your, so you're measuring this sort of size of that arrow effectively. Okay, so each qualification, by that I mean A level, AS, BTECs, the different BTECs, and Key Stage 4, all have their own benchmarks, and that is from the full national data set. Okay, not clients, full national. You're measuring from a start point to an outcome point, and we're going to go through that right now. So we're going to pop students into prior attainment bands, and then the key thing is that we're going to measure how well they have progressed against students who are in the same prior attainment bands nationally. Okay, hopefully that's going to become very clear in just a moment. Before I go on to the benchmark table, very important, remember right back at the beginning, that culture of ambition. The aspirational aspect of Alps is to be in the top 25% of progress nationally. So that's very key. So we're looking at in the top 25% for all of your different subject indicators. We're going to look at different progress indicators overall and in subject areas. And we're going to look at the fact that the progress indicators are reported as an Alps score, but also you're going to get an Alps grade. And here they are. So there's the thermometer for the first time. So every single indicator in the Alps report is mapped onto a thermometer such as this one. You can see then the colors that I'm talking about, right? So if you get an indicator that's in the top 25%, so I'll talk about how that's calculated in a moment, but if your indicator for your overall school progress is in the top 25%, then you will be red for that ranking. And your grade will be a 1, a 2, or a 3. Okay? So you're aspiring to be red. That's slightly different, remember, from the DFE, but top of the thermometer, red hot. If you're seeing any rankings that are blue and have numbers 7, 8, 9, not good. That means that for that indicator, progress is in the bottom 25% nationally. Okay? And then broadly national average is that black bit of the thermometer in the middle there, grades 4, 5, 6. So you've got a grading system running 1 to 9 and 3 different colors, top 25% red, middle 50% black, bottom 25% blue. You don't want to be there. Different types of indicators that we're just going to look at now. Strategically, there is a quality indicator, okay? Basically, that is saying, how are you doing as a school, taking into account every single entry that happened for all of the students in your cohort, okay? I'll say that a different way because I'm not sure I said it very well that way. The quality indicator score is the entries for all students measured from starting point to end point and mapped against the national outcomes, okay? There's also at Key Stage 4 something called a QI8 measure. Now that is taking your Progress 8 rules, applying them to a progress measure. So you are going to get not a Progress 8 number, but you are going to get a ranking on the thermometer for QI8 that is indicative of where you might be in terms of well above average, above average. You're going to get a ranking for that. The red and blue teaching I'm going to talk about when I show you that, a screenshot of that. But that's really about how the quality of teaching is across all of your subjects in your curriculum. Then at the subject level, you get individual Alps gradings for each of your subjects, and you also get class teaching sets. I'm not going to talk about that so much today because obviously then you've got different ethos within your governing body as to how much of that your senior leadership team share with you. At this point, let me say that every single one of those indicators, you can filter key groups. So disadvantage, gender, ethnicity are your standards, but your school or college might have also incorporated some custom fields as well that they might be tracking against. SEND, for example, is probably the most popular. All right then, so I'm going to take you through an A-level benchmark table. It's an A-level one, but it doesn't really matter in the sense of if you're in an 11 to 16 school and listening to this, it's exactly the same principle. So you've got an overview of how the thing's constructed. I'm going to talk about minimum expected grades. Those are, for all intents and purposes, I might call them target grades. I don't like that term because it's not a target grade, it's a minimum expected grade, and I'll talk you through that, and then how we calculate a score and how that's then plotted onto a thermometer to get you a grade. Here we go. This is the benchmark table for A-level England. Okay. Okay, it's a bit busy. There's a lot of numbers on there. Okay, so I'm going to try and dissect this down for you, and kind of give you an overview of what is happening. All right, let me do that here. Right, okay, there's a screenshot, just a snip of that table. So I'm going to go through it bit by bit and explain how it works. Okay, first thing that happens is each student is placed into a prior attainment band. These are the prior attainment bands for A level, but the Key Stage 4 table you'll see will have a similar structure. Okay. So then what we do is we look at the national data set and you work out the average grades achieved by students in each of the bands. I've read that, so I'm going to show you it there. There's your highest prior attainment band. So those students there at GCSE got A star and A's at GCSE, okay? Then what we've done is we've looked at, right, okay, what did the top provider in that data set, national data set, remember, get on average with their students, okay? So 132 UCAS points was the average score achieved by the best, the top, the pinnacle provider in the data set, okay? That's equivalent to A star minus. So on average, A star, A star, A star, A star, A star, A, with their students, okay? The second provider got 126, sorry, the provider at the 90% line got 126, and the lowest provider, the one that did the least well, with that prior attainment band of student got 106. That's an A stroke B. So that's the difference between being a student in that banding category in the top provider in the country and the lowest provider in the country. Okay? So the Alps aspiration is to say, all right then, what did the provider at the 25% mark do? The top 25%, remember, is your aspiration. They did that. So they got 124 UCAS points with that prior attainment category of student. So that's an A+. Okie doke. Now that A+ becomes the minimum expected grade. So if you have any students in that prior attainment band, then the minimum grade that you'd be expecting to see with them would be an A. Okay, so that is their MEG, their minimum expected grade. Now, schools set subject-specific targets differently. There are a whole load of different principles there, so I'm not even going to try. But the idea is that that's the start point, the A, and that you then might want to set subject-specific targets around that A grade, okay? But it's the idea is it's a minimum. If you drop below it, you're potentially at risk of well, as a school, you're at risk of being below that 25% progress mark. Okay, so if you hit that, so if all of your students hit that grade, then you would be red hot in terms of you would be a school making progress in the top 25%. Okay? So that's the idea. If you're in BTEC, by the way, I didn't say it earlier, but the BTEC value added provider, sorry, the BTEC provider value added is the equivalent quality indicator. So the quality indicator is everybody all in. If everybody gets their MEG, that dark red line, then you are in the top 25% of progress. I hope that makes sense. There's your red line. So you can see across there that those are the MEGs for each different prior attainment band for your students. All right. So if everybody got, depending on what category they were in, if everybody got that, ding, you are quality indicator, everybody, all entries in, a red hot. I hope that makes sense. If you then just want to see those, there's the horizontal, sorry, the vertical table. Those are your MEGs for your A levels. Okay, now those are your BTECs, exactly the same. Okay, it's exactly the same principle. There's your highest prior attainers in your BTEC category, and that's their minimum expected grade, a distinction star. Okay, now remember I said that vocational addition to the level 3 value added last year. So you have got two types of BTECs. Those are the old ones, the 2010s, with no external assessment. These are the new ones with a degree of external assessment. So there are slightly different minimum expected grades between those two different types of qualifications. These 2010s do not count in the performance tables any longer. These do. So that was what that measure was referring to. Okay. There's your key stage 4. Sorry, this is the English one. If you're Welsh, it's exactly the same. These are just Welsh national test scores across the top. And your minimum expected grades would be A star to G and not 9 to 8. Those are your MEGs for your key stage 4 with a bit of a double award one there for your, well, predominantly your science double award there. And this is your level 2 BTECs. So that's the BTECs that are key stage 4 BTECs. Okay, I hope all that makes sense. Now then, each indicator has got a score and a grade. Okay, so you have got an Alps score. Now remember I said a long time ago now that the score rotates around 1.00. So if everybody gets their minimum expected grade, then you have a score of 1.00 for that indicator. I have just put down here that 0.2 represents a difference per grade, a difference per student. goodness me, a grade per student, sorry, which means that if you see a score of 1.2, every student has performed one up from their MEG. And if you see a grade of 0.8, every student has performed one lower than their MEG. Okay? So that's the score. So every individual indicator gets a score. And then we have to translate that into a grade using our thermometers. So every thermometer is unique, and I am going to go through that right now. The uniqueness of the thermometer means that we have got to plot the Alps score, this side, against the thermometer, and we are then given a grade for that indicator. Okay? So every indicator has a unique thermometer. If all students achieve their MEG, then we've already said that that gives me an Alps score of 1.00, but what does that mean for my overall Alps grade? Here are some examples at a subject level. Let's look at them in terms of the A level. Okay, if I am an A level teacher of biology and I get all of my students their MEG in biology, then I get a score of 1.00, and that plots me way up here on the thermometer. It puts me in the top 10%. Now, how does that make sense, I hear you ask, because aren't the MEGs set around the 75% line? Now then, different subjects make different progress relative to that MEG nationally. So here's what we do to construct the thermometers. You take every biology department in the country and you work out their Alps score. They then get a ranking, okay, based on whatever the top provider got, the best biology department in the country. What did they get in terms of their score? 1.00, rotating around that. And what did the lowest or the least well-performing biology department get? And then you rank them. And then you look at the biology department at the 75% line and you say, okay, what's that number? And in order to be read, you got to match that number. Okay? Now, you'll see that different subjects, the thermometers are different. So if I get a 1 for biology, it pops me in grade 2, which means that my biology thermometer, the 1.00, that can't be 1.00. It must be lower than 1.00. I'm going to show you that in a second. However, if I was a media studies teacher, then if I get 1.00, oh my goodness, it puts me down in a grade 6, which is almost down towards the bottom 25%, because students do better nationally in media studies than they do in biology against those MEGs. Why is that? Because of lots of different factors. And don't just jump on the difficulty bandwagon. Okay? It could be that media studies teachers across the country are absolutely fantastic. They are absolutely spot on, and biology teachers aren't. I can say that because I'm a biology teacher. The media studies teachers are doing superb things with their young people. So there's lots of different factors. You will note in chemistry here that a 1.00 at GCSE only gets you into the spot on national average. Why is that? Probably because chemistry at GCSE is skewed towards the more able. And pupils at the higher prior attainment ability range tend to do better and make better progress. Don't like saying that, but there it is. So you've got to understand, a subject teacher has got to understand that thermometer. Let me give you an example. Here is an A-level chemistry thermometer. You can see that the top provider at A-level chemistry is very similar to biology, 1.05. That means that the top performing chemistry department got some of their students 1 up from the MEG. And if you're remembering that 0.2 magic number, it's about a quarter, okay? Meanwhile, in drama, The top provider in drama got their students more than 1 grade above the MEG. Okay? Therefore, if I have a chemistry department here that scores 1.02 and a drama department on 1.04, the drama department have a higher score but a lower grade, because students in drama are doing better against the MEGs than they are in chemistry. Okay, so the chemistry department's looking nice, grade 2, top 10%, whereas the drama department on a higher score is looking okay, grade 4, top 40%. Okay, hope that makes sense. So what should you be looking at then? Once you know all that, and I hope you've got that clear, because we're going to see some different scores and numbers here, okay, and grades. Okay, so if you are faced with Connect Interactive, this is the kind of screenshot that you will see. This is the strategic overview, okay? Here is your quality indicator. That is, remember, every entry in. So this school here did 0.96, which means that they have got pretty much every student their MEG, but not quite everyone. So they're just sitting underneath that 3. They're on a grade 4, okay? Meanwhile, you've got a couple of red and blue. Right, red teaching. 13% of entries in this school were in subjects that were red in their thermometer, okay? So what you want is you want for that percentage there to be as high as possible, okay? 13% is not very high, it only gets you a grade 6. So the amount of very, very strong teaching in this school is not great. It's only a grade 6, okay? So it's in the bottom 40%. So you want that number to be as high as possible. Meanwhile, the blue teaching and learning is 20%. So a fifth of entries are in subjects that are blue, which is not necessarily where you want to be. So you want this percentage to be as low as possible. So you've got a 4, a 5, and a 6, and they average out to be that T-score at the top. So effectively, governors, if you're looking at the sort of quality of teaching across your subjects, red and blue teaching, and your quality of progress across your whole curriculum, quality indicator, then the T-score gives you a feel for that. And for this school, it's broadly in line with national. Okay, their level 3 value added score is likely to be bouncing around 0 somewhere. They'll be in the average category. Okay, now I can break this strategic indicator down by key performance groups. I've done it for gender here. You can do this as a monitoring point or as an end of year exam point. Okay, so I've broken it down by male, female. You note here that it's quite noticeable that your boys are not performing as well as your girls. Their quality indicator score is a 5, girls 3. So you might, as a governor, then start to ask questions about the progress of the boys in this school. And you can do this for disadvantaged, and you can do this for ethnicity and any other custom fields that the schools put in. Now, this is a monitoring point, and this is called my banded by ability table. So you'll notice that I've got my prior achievement bands down here. I've got 4 students in that top band, and I'm able to map their progress against that big table that we were looking at. So again, I would be, as governor, possibly asking questions around the stretch of the most able here. They're kind of blue. So you're kind of going to, you're kind of saying, those 4 students, I know there's only 4, but can we have a conversation around, what subjects are they doing and why are they not making the progress? Just a point on that number, these are small numbers. One student might have a big impact on that, which is why I don't think Alps should ever be used as a stick. But it is a forum, it is a platform for having a really powerful conversation about those stretch and challenge strategies that are in place across the curriculum. Okay. I can also filter this by key groups. I've done a gender one again there. Now look at that for a key group. your girls are over here, and my goodness, you can see that the top performing girls are definitely out of kilter with one with their male peer group, and two with the students, the girls who are less able coming into to the school. And you can actually see that the UCAS point output, like these students here, are all getting more than these students in this banding category. So again, as governors, you're going to be asking the question of, my goodness, what are those girls doing? Why aren't they making the progress? What subjects are they doing? And how can we put intervention in place to support them? Here's your subject breakdown. Now there's where your scores come into play. So you've got a biology score there, which is lower than 1.02, quite a lot of other departments, but the grading is higher because of that unique thermometer. Okay. So what you're going to look at there, this is a monitoring point, by the way. So if you're getting this in November, you're going to be able to ask the assessment team, the school improvement team, what are you doing about history and maths? That's a lot of students. There's a lot of students taking it. A lot of students have got their eggs in the history and maths basket. What's going on? How can we improve those outcomes for those young people in those subject areas? Similarly, you can do a key analysis grouping, and I'm just going to pick out a few there. Like for example, your girls and in chemistry, there's a gap between your boys and your girls. That might account for your most able, on the first banded by ability table, that perhaps the more able girls are taking chemistry and not doing as well as their male peers. So you can see how you can start to ask those questions on these key groups, and should be asking those questions on these key groups as you're going through the year, in the sense of this is a monitoring point. Okay. Finally, none of that makes any sense whatsoever unless your accuracy of predicting is correct. So here's just a little snapshot from the accuracy of predicting, monitoring accuracy area, where I've got 4 monitoring points, and you can see the trend and the fluctuations in the trend. I can manipulate this trend to include an exam result. So I could look at what did my year 13s or 11s do in the monitoring points leading up to the exam, and then what did they do in the exam. I can ask questions around that, and believe me, you can see some very clear pictures on that being out of kilter and over predicting or under predicting going on in department areas. And similarly, you can do the same with what did this department get in the summer and what are they now predicting for their new cohort, and is that achievable, is that realistic, or have we got an accuracy issue, a monitoring accuracy issue? Okay. Look, I hope that was, I've gone slightly over my 45 minutes. Hope you don't mind, hope you're still with me. But that was a sort of overview of the methodology and how you might see the strategic and subject indicators given to you in governors' meetings. If you do have any further questions, do please email us on training@alps.education, and we can help. And any questions that you might have, just pop us a line. Hopefully that helped, and hopefully that means that you can go back into governing body meetings and be asking the critical questions that ultimately result in great progress for all of your students in your schools and colleges. Thank you very much for listening this afternoon, and best wishes.